You want me to? You ready for me to go?
Yes.
And you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules. First thing I want to do is thank everyone in our manufacturing sector, our most important wealth creation industries in the Great Lakes Bay region and the state of Michigan. Everything that you do, you know, supports every other organization as money flows through our economy. So a big shout out to all of you for doing what you do. I want to quick give you an idea who we are as a small business development center of Great Lakes Bay region, hosted out of Saginaw Valley State University. We are providers of consulting services to businesses across the state of Michigan. We are partially funded through the Small Business Administration at a federal level, Michigan Economic Development Corporation at a state level, and then through some matching funds that are provided at a local level by the by Saginaw Valley State University. And we're one of the partners within the Cremona College of Business, along with the Stevens Family Business Institute, Great Lakes Bay Manufacturers Association, the Dow Entrepreneurship Program, and as well the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Association. We provide no-cost consulting, training, and research to assist small businesses to launch, grow, and transition and innovate. And that's really what we do. We're a team of about just under 100 consultants that do everything from startup consulting to tech starts across the state of Michigan. I want to focus in the short time that we have on a couple of areas and really talking about the C-19 or COVID-19 challenges that we're all facing. I want to talk specifically about some of the funding programs that are out there, some of the fundamental changes that are happening, short-term and long-term, challenges of chasing customers versus chasing money, and then some workplace safety issues I think that everyone recognizes we're going to have to implement. The soup associated with, it's actually probably more of a stew than soup, with all of the acronyms. EIDL, many of you have heard of this. This is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. This is a low interest loan, 3.75% loan, up to a 30-year term with a cap of a $10 million loan that's available to small business. The U.S. government, federal SBA program defines small business as less than 500 employees, generally speaking, and less than 50 million in total revenues, but that differs by industry. And that's generally specific to the manufacturing industry. So there are NAICS codes that drive that decision tree, if you will, for eligibility. So that program right now went through its first phase. The second phase of that program is getting ready to start this week. The portal is not open as of today. The update from the SBA this morning was that that portal is expected to be open by the end of this week. We're going to get some more guidance from that. We're in routine contact with the SBA as one of our lead partners, but that program will open up sometime this week. That's again, 3.75% interest note, 30 years. Anything over $25,000 has a collateral requirement associated with it. The PPT, it's actually, sorry, typo on my part, PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, is the one that's probably getting the most press right now. That has been reauthorized at $310 billion. That is a 1% interest loan with a term of 2 years. It has no collateral requirement. It has no personal guarantee requirement. The difference between the two programs is that the EIDL loan is direct with the U.S. Department of Treasury. There's no intermediary. So the application is direct through the Small Business Administration. The PPP loan is through local 7A and 504 SBA lenders, which we have a number of across the state of Michigan. Right now, in the update we got this morning from the SBA, it looks like there's been $1 billion returned to that fund from the first round, and that's to be expected. And I will tell you that a lot of the clients that I've consulted with, especially in industries that have already gone to the process of laying people off, where calling people back to work is not really a reality. A lot of those companies submitted applications through their lenders. They were awarded PPP funds, only to find out that because of the terms and conditions of the loan, makes it very difficult for them to leverage that loan for their business and have returned those funds. So that's in addition to some of the big ones you've heard about on the news recently. The PPP loan program is a $2 million loan max. Again, two-year term, 1% interest, no collateral, no personal guarantee. Both of these come with a 6-month deferral of interest and principal right off the bat. The big challenge with PPP, if you're keeping up with all of the guidance that's coming out, is that this is very limited in its use. It is intended to be used primarily as a working capital loan for payroll and associated payroll costs, including federal taxes, Social Security tax, federal taxes on employment wages, but it's a fully burdened wage. So that also includes things like pension programs, health insurance, other types of costs that employers have associated with compensation for individuals. It also includes eligible funds for rents and lease payments on real property, mortgage interest or interest accumulated on other certain short and long-term notes payable, as well as utility costs. The trick with this one is that it covers an 8-week period, and right now that 8-week process begins at closing. So if you're a business that is into kind of a minimal or shutdown mode right now, that's going to be ramping up at some point in time in the future, you're going to struggle with meeting that 8-week window because it starts at closing of the loan. When you get an award, notification of award through your lender, you have 10 days to close that loan. So you know that the window is fairly short. ERTC is another acronym that is not being talked about. And this is the Employee Retention Tax Credit. In many cases, this may be a more beneficial avenue for a number of businesses as opposed to the Paycheck Protection Program or in even some cases the EIDL. So where the PPP program is very limited in its use, the EIDL program is fairly expansive in its use, meaning it can be used for all working capital needs for a business. You're not permitted to grow or use that for capital expense, but it is available for all working capital needs. The ERTC, Employee Retention Tax Credit, is something I would encourage any business to talk to their CPA about. The triggering events for activation of the tax credit involves when your sales for a quarter drop below 50% of the sales from the prior year. So we know that in Q2 of this year, that's going to be a qualifying period for most businesses. The period where the tax credit stops is when your the quarter in which your sales hit 80% of your prior year sales for the same quarter. And so this can be a pretty extensive period of time for businesses that may be affected for a longer period of time. So those are kind of the two in a nutshell. I can certainly answer more questions. When we get into the area of fundamental change, both short-term and long-term, businesses are facing a lot of challenges, which is, how soon they will be, permitted to kind of begin to ramp back up, and then how long will that process take? We know that domestic and global supply chains are heavily disrupted. If you're tier 2, 3, 4 in the auto industry, you're probably not getting paid right now by your customers. So cash flow is tight for everybody. What we're reading right now is that's expected to last for some period of time. When you get into certain industries like hospitality industry, as an example, and restaurant industry, likely they won't reach full capacity for probably somewhere close to a year to 18 months from now. And that's going to be dependent upon widespread vaccination availability across the US. So we can expect to see some peaks and valleys related to social distancing and longer term effects of what's happening. that affects everybody's business and how fast they're able to bring people back in to the business and ramp up sales. One of the biggest challenges that a lot of businesses are having right now is the chasing dollars versus chasing customers. So everyone's hyper focused on access to working capital, either through the EIDL or the PPP program, or lines of credit through lenders. What I would tell you is that that market's going to continue to be tight. There's not going to be likely enough resource to go around. It's expected that this next round of funding through the PPP and EIDL program will probably exhaust itself by the end of the week, which will continue to leave a number of businesses without access to those critical resources. Hopefully, there will be some longer term funding opportunities and resource opportunities that come available. One of the things that we're challenging a lot of our clients on right now is to really shift their focus from chasing dollars to chasing customers. And why do we say that? Customer needs are changing. We know that. If we were to talk about, and I use the restaurant industry often in analogies because it's so heavily impacted. Many of my restaurant clients I challenge with questions like, well, how likely is it, if you're able to open up tomorrow for your sit-down restaurant, how likely is it your customers are going to come through the door, sit down, and how comfortable do you think they'll be sitting in a room with a bunch of strangers, people they don't know, and two, how likely will they be to tolerate being served a meal by someone wearing gloves and a mask? The universal answer to that is almost always, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think customers are going to tolerate that, and that's likely going to be the case. So every industry has to really kind of dig deep into looking at their customers and customer needs and how those needs are changing in their marketplace, because that ultimately is what's going to drive cash flows in the future. We know it's changing. We know that the effects of this are going to be a lot longer, probably more realistically 18 to 24 months as businesses start to ramp back up. Sales are not going to hit day one. Now, there are some industries where that's more likely to happen. If you're in the supply chain for personal protective equipment and other products, you're already seeing growth in your industry. But that doesn't really happen for everybody. So there's a lot of challenges with that. The next topic I want to address is around workplace safety. One of the things I will tell you is my bias around manufacturing environment better than just about any other environment, with the exception of healthcare delivery, understands workplace safety. So think about all of the changes that your employees and your organization is going to need to go through in order to be a safe and accessible work environment for your employees. You watch some of the video footage on the news of the meat packing industry, and you can see in an assembly and processing capacity how close people stand to each other and work next to each other. And the idea of social distancing in a work environment, in a production environment where you've got people standing shoulder to shoulder in a fast-paced environment, is going to be a challenge for a lot of employers. So thinking kind of creatively about this, MIOSHA, OSHA, all kinds of rules are going to likely be in process coming down the pike in terms of workplace safety. Manufacturing, I think, has a big leg up as an industry because they have this is common practice for you, and you'll be much more adaptable to that. So there are some things that are going to happen. 2 resources that are on here. I've got the SBDC of Michigan as a resource, but the one I would really draw you to is the Small Business Association of Michigan. I think particularly their resource page on getting back to work and tips and resources is a really excellent resource for Michigan businesses. So I would encourage you to use that. I've hit probably my time limit, so I'm going to stop talking. And I'm going to turn this over to Brenda Flory, who is Business Development Manager with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate having the opportunity of participating in today's webinar. Since the state of emergency was declared on March 10th, the MEDC has been working to develop a series of initiatives and programs to support the significant demand from Michigan's workforce due to the economic impacts of COVID-19. Through the Michigan Small Business Relief Program, we were able to provide $20 million in grants and loans to the businesses across the state last month. And we're also working with a coalition of partners to promote the federal Paycheck Protection Program for businesses to benefit from forgivable grants during this time. We've also exhausted $2 million that was approved for Northern initiatives to provide micro and small business loans to Michigan businesses impacted by the outbreak within 24 hours due to the demand. We know there continues to be a serious need for financial relief throughout the state, which is why we're continuing to do all we can do to provide support at this time through our other programs and initiatives. In response to the outbreak, the State Peer Michigan Business Connects Matchmaking Program has launched a free online procurement and donation platform to assist suppliers of critical health and human services across a broad range of categories, including local municipalities in accessing supplies and products as they respond to the COVID-19 outbreak. The platform makes virtual introductions between businesses within the state that are capable of providing or donating supplies, including food, medical devices, paper products, cleaning equipment, and more. And it also helps identify any manufacturers with the capability required to produce needed personal protection equipment for our health professionals on the front lines in the fight against COVID-19. Utilizing PMBC's virtual procurement platform, the PMBC connected Barber Packaging, a Bangor, Michigan industry leader in designing and manufacturing packaging systems, with the state. As a direct result of the connection, Barber Packaging is now supporting the need for PPE throughout Michigan by fulfilling orders for more than 500,000 face shields. This partnership throughout Michigan, by fulfilling orders for this partnership helps ensure frontline medical workers are properly protected and mitigates the spread of COVID-19. Tanya, I guess I'd flip to my slides now. The next one. Oops. Let's see it. Okay. Well, I'll just touch on the categories. There are some resources I'd just like to provide some updates on. The first was the Peer Michigan Business Connect COVID-19 Emergency Access and Retooling Grants. During the week of April 20th, the MEDC announced the grantees for the newly created Peer Michigan Business Connect COVID-19 Emergency Access and Retooling Grants program. Through the program, we dedicated $1 million to provide grants to support Michigan businesses with eligible expenses looking to immediately retool and manufacture critical health and human service supplies in response to COVID-19. One of the examples was Tentcraft in Traverse City that had never manufactured products for the healthcare or medical industry before. And after receiving the Emergency Access and Retooling Grant, the company was able to pivot toward the new products, keeping employees and helping produce PPE products needed by the frontline healthcare workers. I love technology when it works. Through these grants, we are helping businesses that just a few months ago were making tents, engines, and hydraulic filter cartridges pivot to developing drive-through for tents for COVID-19, screening respirators, and surgical masks. Another program that has been updated in response to the pandemic is our Capital Access Program. As the small and medium businesses are starting to be negatively impacted by COVID-19, existing programs through the MEDC Capital Access Program has been opening access to private lender financing for small businesses that might not otherwise be able to get the financing. Any business that has been affected by COVID-19 is eligible to receive support through our collateral support and loan participation programs. The collateral support program helps to enable borrowers to acquire the necessary financing that may otherwise be unavailable due to a collateral shortfall. This month, as an example, we supported a cartridge manufacturer, National Filters in Harbor Beach, in helping them purchase equipment necessary to increase surgical mask production from 250 per day to 7,200 masks per hour through the collateral support program. Thanks to the support, the company will also begin producing N95 respirators at the rate of 2,000 per hour, and it's rehiring 16 employees who had previously been laid off due to the COVID-19 outbreak. Additional information on the eligibility requirements for the programs can be found on our website, which is also repeated on my last slide, but in case we need it now, it's michiganbusiness.org COVID-19. And I have verified with Chris Cook, who leads our capital markets team, that our financing programs are available to companies with 750 employees or less. There are a lot of lenders across Michigan that already participate in the MEDC Capital Access Program, and one of the encouragements for the businesses on the call today would be to talk to your lender to see if any of these programs are right for you. Another program that's been modified in response to COVID-19 is the State Trade Expansion Program, which has been actively used by a lot of companies throughout my region. The STEP program is designed to spur job creation by empowering Michigan businesses to export their products through either increasing the number of businesses that export or increasing the dollar value of their exports. In response to COVID-19, the STEP program has been modified, and we've increased the levels of support for reimbursement for website development, shipping of sample products, and marketing material design. So now is a really good time for those companies that haven't participated in the STEP program to give some consideration. The annual max per year is $15,000 through the program. All right, technology is back with me. There's a really lengthy website, but after the call, if there's anyone that isn't familiar with the program that would like more on it, I have an excellent program summary. And then the last update I'd like to provide is on changes to the MSF Awardee Relief Initiative. Through the MSF Awardee Relief Initiative, we're now providing emergency relief to businesses and projects that have received economic assistance from the Michigan Strategic Fund. In doing so, we're working to provide greater flexibility in the face of COVID-19 by temporarily allowing measures like extended milestones, due dates for up to a year, and providing up to a year of deferred payment on financing agreements. This program is available to support any MSF awardee that is negatively financially impacted by COVID, but will not provide any additional assistance. Through these programs and others, we're doing everything we can to help enable economic prosperity for businesses and communities of all sizes throughout this crisis. The last slide that we're up on now has two of the websites that I would encourage you to check out for additional information on the resources available through the MEDC. And while you're there, you can also sign up for the regular COVID-19 e-blast to receive information and updates from the MEDC in real time. And the second website listed would be a good source for valuable resources for employers and workers, including information for employers and employees on unemployment insurance, a place to sign up for regular COVID-19 updates and to stay informed on the governor's latest efforts to mitigate the impact of the virus on our states and residents and economy. I appreciate having a few moments of your time this morning, and now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jeremy Bockelman, Executive Director and Senior Business Advisor for the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Brenda. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. It's a beautiful day out, and I'm at my home office looking out the window and thinking and excited about getting back to business as normal. But I think we all know that the new normal will be drastically different for all of us. I'm going to go over a few items that the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center is doing and can help support and provide you with, and then some other ideas and stories to help kind of illustrate what's going on across our region, across the state, and across the country. So first and foremost, the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center is supported by the National Institute of Standards and Technology via the Department of Commerce. We're also supported by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And our job is to help provide support to small to medium-sized manufacturers throughout the state and, quite frankly, throughout the country. The cool thing about our program is we are very widespread and diverse. There's roughly 270 offices like ours throughout the country. In Michigan, we have 5 locations. Our headquarters is in Plymouth, Michigan. We do have offices in Grand Rapids, Traverse City, Marquette, and Saginaw. And of course, if you know anybody or any businesses that are looking for assistance, feel free to go to our website, the-center.org, and that will provide you with where our other locations are. So the neat thing about the manufacturing extension partnership is we have the ability to share with our sister organizations, not just in the state, but throughout the country. We're in tune with our federal and state partners, listening and learning on what is happening out there. I made it a little simple for everybody here. I took one slide, and on the slide, as you see here, is COVID-19 updates and resources. Now, I understand that everybody's getting bombarded with different information in regards to COVID, how to go back to work, what to expect. The Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center put together this resource portal for the businesses to go to. And I wanted to point out 5 main things here. So the first item, under COVID-19 Critical Supplies Survey, you'll see that the middle of the screen to the right, or to your right. And the National Foundation for Manufacturing Excellence has a portal that businesses that are manufacturing or have supplies that they can provide for other businesses throughout the country, please feel free to go in there, click that button, and fill out your information. It's similar to the PMBC, but it's more, but ours is more of a national level here as opposed to the state level with the MEDC. Now, the research staff out of our Plymouth office is working round the clock to help support the PMBC, the Pure Michigan Business Connect. So not only do I encourage you to fill out the National Foundation for Manufacturing Excellence survey, make sure that you at least go in to the MEDC's PMBC portal and update your information if you haven't done already. Second, under COVID-19 resources, you will see something called supply chain disruption planning. Okay, so the COVID-19 resources is on the left, second row on your left or first column. And you click on that and there's a variety of different resources, but I wanted to point out in particular the supply chain disruption. So I'm going to share a story, and I saw Corey Gerger on the that signed in. I'm not sure who else from Duralast, and my apologies in advance if I don't get this 100% accurate, but I was told that, well, let me tell you that Duralast Roofing has been instrumental in responding to the coronavirus supply chain and have been making numerous and changed over their operation to help support this. One of the items that they're providing, though morbid, is body bags. And you know, the first thing I thought was, don't we have enough? Well, apparently not. But here's what's more interesting: that in the Wuhan area of China, there was a large manufacturer that supplied body bags, and of course, having access to those is virtually impossible when they're going under the same strife. Furthermore, I was also told that in the part of Italy in which their high volume of cases was one of the largest ventilator manufacturers. Again, we're having difficulty in order to source those. But the great news is a lot of the manufacturers in our region have responded like Duralast to come up with ideas and ways in order to supply at a minimum locally. Other businesses that have been instrumental in, and I'm not going to get them all here, but Vantage Plastics has been making face shields, amongst other things. Endurance Carbide has been helping making valves for ventilator masks. A lot of businesses have come to the table to help make hand sanitizers. So there's a lot going on here. That's just a touch, but I think it's an opportunity for us to start evaluating our existing supply chain. Because look, everybody's going to be looking for other opportunities, secondary, tertiary suppliers. Start that today. Start that now so you can get ahead of the game. As Dave alluded to before, you know, this is going to be 2 years, but it's always going to be the new normal. But I think this is an opportunity similar to what we had in 2008, 2009 with the recession. there's a shift in diversification opportunities, and I think right now for us to look at this and say challenges are inevitable, defeat is optional, and start looking at what you can do inside of your business. Third item that I wanted to point out on this is, again, under the COVID-19 resources, came across something out of Wayne County. They have a nice graph. It makes it easy and simple to understand and read. It talks about 5 different programs, including the PPP, the SBA disaster assistance loan. I do want to make a comment that unless Dave hadn't touched on it, I did see an email that came through that said, what if we're above 700 employees? There is the SBA disaster assistance loan that is typically between 250 or 150 employees, but it gives you all the information that you need, and it's a nice one-page PDF document. Feel free to go on there and take a look. A couple other things here. Under the message board, you'll see capabilities and needs, list of businesses and where to get supplies. We are continually updating that. The statewide staff for the MMTC is calling, reaching out to manufacturers. If you haven't heard from us, you may be hearing from us soon. But one of the things that we're going to have to get used to is these businesses are going to, manufacturers are going to have to supply their employees with masks, with shields, a variety of different PPE equipment. Well, let's look at our neighbors and our friends. Let's try to source it locally and throughout the state before we start looking, outside of the area. So if you have any supplies that you can help provide, or more importantly, manufacture, please drop one of us a line, whether it's myself or for anybody within the statewide system. We'd be happy to update that and put that in. And I would also encourage you to do that in addition to the PMBC. A couple other items here under frequently asked questions, COVID-19 response strategies. I want to make sure that everybody understands that our organization is a melting pot of manufacturing knowledge. We have people with different levels of expertise, have been former executives to the shop floor, supervisors all around, and they have been doing this for a long time. And so if you have any particular questions as it relates to starting up, as it relates to PPAP, as it relates to whatever it may be, feel free, whether it's through myself or just go online to the contact us, and we will answer as best as we can. If there's also a list of frequently asked questions that you can also go into, click on. But we're here as a resource for you to help you and to point you in the right direction. Finally, on the center's website, you will see classes and events, and we're doing a number of webinars and training at no cost or at a very nominal cost for businesses in order for them to learn, whether they might not be at the plant, maybe they're at home, they need to learn something, they need to have particular questions. Feel free to go through and review those different types of resources for training and webinars. So finally, I have just a handful more things here. It's probably not going to be news to many people here, but I do want to give you just 5 things to think about. A couple weeks back, I sent out an email with 10 ideas, that are kind of different, maybe outside of the box, in order to look at this COVID-19 issue that we have. So one, I already alluded to this before. We have to start looking at reshoring and diversification. We have to be a little selfish ourselves here. And by looking at the total cost of ownership and how we utilize our supply chain, and to really, again, look at what our neighbors are doing. I reflect back and look at where I live personally, and I've gotten to know some of the neighbors. Yes, more than 6 feet away, but I have gotten to know them, and surprising what they can offer me as a neighbor of a friendship. So I'd also look at what can we do, what can we offer, and to bring more business back to our shores here. And also use the PPE as an opportunity to get into other markets. And a number of manufacturers have been telling me that this is something that they're going to continue to do, regardless of when things get back to normal. They want to continue to help do this and support this. Second, cross-training of employees. Though some have had layoffs or had to negotiate another way with their employees in between the delay and getting back to full speed, but a lot of them have realized that they do need to do a lot more cross-training amongst maybe machine operators and maintenance staff, because they're on a shoestring budget right now. They don't have the resources in place. So this gives you the opportunity to start looking at and evaluating, how am I going to weather this storm if it happens again? Okay. Next, the other invisible virus, cybersecurity. And I've been reading a number of articles out there that are talking about how these mad hackers are have more time on their hands and are figuring out ways to help disrupt and continue to disrupt manufacturing. And understand, this isn't just a matter of going online and taking a training and checking a box and getting a certificate from your employer. This is looking at taking an inventory, looking at your equipment, looking at your robots, looking at anything that you have in your facility that could be detrimental to future business. That is also a silent killer, is the cyber. And I know that there's a couple of businesses that are on this call that have experienced that and understand how big of a cash flow that can hurt, just as bad as the virus, coronavirus. So please be cognizant of that. So what about the what ifs, right? And I remember reflecting back and saying, okay, we have to have, as an organization, every individual business should have a business continuity program in place. What happens? What if this happens? Well, we all think that's a little bit invisible to us, but we're not. I'm going to actually refer back to Duralast again. I know years ago they had gone down the path of looking at business continuity, and I'm sure if I asked Jason Tunney or Jill Lynch, they're continually evaluating and looking at their business to protect themselves and their employees, most importantly. So make sure that you start evaluating business continuity, looking at from a variety of standpoints, from the financial aspect to the operations, marketing, you name it. There are plenty of resources out there. I can provide some assistance to you in regards to that. And then the final item is start looking right now at your best practices of cleaning, health, and safety. I believe both Dave and Brenda alluded to this, but OSHA is going to be laying down the hammer once we go back. They're going to be looking at businesses, going into businesses, and they will be documenting and fining and you name it. So make sure that not only are you sourcing the equipment or the stuff that you need to help protect your employees, but put them on a disinfectant, constant cleaning program within the organization. Goes back to your simple autonomous maintenance, but altogether your total productive maintenance opportunities to make sure that everything is sound and ready to operate when we get full speed ahead. I'm going to leave you on this note before I pass it on. The great news is the majority of the people I talk to are optimistic. Yes, revenue has gone down. Orders are at a lull or are slowing down. But there's a reason to be optimistic here. And I think if we start looking at how we operate on a day-to-day basis and start looking at opportunities to support each other on the reshoring, we're going to come out of this. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, Michigan has been the hardest hit right now with unemployment. Of course, it still shows the heavy dependence that we have on auto. Don't get me wrong, we always have to have auto. That needs to be our backbone. But let's start looking at opportunities to grow our businesses. We're always here. The Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center team, and we're here to help you. And we appreciate everybody being on the call today. I'm going to introduce you to Scott Phillips, great guy, great person, industry 4.0 buff. And he's with the Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Assistance Center at the Economic Growth Institute at the University of Michigan. I'm going to pass it on to you.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. And Tanya, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Well, thanks again, Jeremy, and thanks, Tanya and the Great Lakes Bay Manufacturing Association for inviting us to be part of the call. It's very helpful for us to help get the word out about our program that may be of assistance to some of the folks on the phone here today. So I'm with the Great Lakes Trade Adjustment Center, as Jeremy said. We're at the Economic Growth Institute, which is part of the University of Michigan, and we manage a federal matching funds program for import impacted manufacturers. Our program is known as TAAF, Trade Adjustment Assistance for Firms. It's a federally funded program managed through the Economic Development Administration. It's been around for about 45 years, although not many people know about it. And we're one of 11 centers that manage the program out in the field, and we manage the program for Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. And it's the only federal program that is specifically designed to help small manufacturing companies that have been hurt by imports. And so I'll say that while this program didn't originate from the COVID crisis, the reason we're here today is it is a good source of funds for those that can qualify, and it's very flexible, and it can be used as part of your longer term recovery plans. There is no fee to apply to this program. There's minimal fees once you've been accepted or certified. Once you are accepted in the program and certified, you're eligible for $75,000 in matching funds. And those funds can be used for a number of things, which I'll talk about. It's very flexible in terms of its use. By going through the process, you'll also receive some site visits and a customized action plan and a confidential look by some people from our office, another set of outside eyes to help you think about your business. As you implement projects using the funds, you, the client, can choose the service providers. We have firms we can recommend, and we obviously work closely with MMTC. So a lot of the programs that Jeremy already mentioned about market diversification and things that they and others offer, you could think of us as kind of a half-off coupon book to help fund those services that you can take advantage of. There's 3 criteria to qualify for this program. The first is to ask if you've been directly impacted by imports, meaning that we can speak with a handful of your customers or buyers and find some that will validate that they've had to shift some purchases overseas for cost or whatever reason. The second is, are your sales down by 5% or more? And the period of time we look at for that is quite flexible. It can be as simple as the last 12 months, but it can be as short as the last 6 months. And so we've had a lot of manufacturers who haven't qualified in the past, but most recently they have because of the COVID-19 crisis. And the third criteria is that your average employment, monthly employment, also needs to be down by 5% over that same period of time. So those are the 3 criteria. There's a little bit of flexibility and nuance around all 3 of those criteria. We do about 20 new petitions, 15 to 20 a year. At any given time, we have about 60 active spending clients in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, anywhere from 15 to 25 in each of the 3 states. So the phase 1 is a petition, putting a petition together. That's my job and our team's job to work with you to submit a petition on your behalf to the EDA in Washington, D.C. It can take them 2 to 3 months to do a legal review of that petition. Once that's certified, then we do a site visit and work with you to develop a plan to spend the funds. Once you approve that plan and that's sent to the EDA as well and approved, that can be another 2 to 3 months. But at that point, once we're approved, we're in a mode of 3 to 5 years. You have up to 5 years to use the $75,000 in matching funds. Some manufacturers use that money up rather quickly in just a few large projects, but smaller companies tend to take more time and do more smaller projects. Examples of types of projects that our companies have used this for over the 40 years, and there's a longer list on our website at the website address below here, but they can be used for growing top line, marketing and sales, new product development expertise, sales development, market research, sales training. People use it for the shop floor to do productivity improvements, quality certifications, lean manufacturing skills training. But it can also be used for cost accounting, ERP or other software implementation, succession planning, management development. So it's really a short list that you can't use this program for. The one thing you cannot use it for is capital equipment purchase. And again, what you should look for your own business, if you're a manufacturer or if you're just passing this program on to others to know about, is we look for companies that have flat or declining sales, flat or declining employment. Maybe they're losing bids. Maybe they haven't lost business with existing customers, but they've lost some bids to foreign competitors, or there's some sort of other indication of increased import competition. So that's what we look for, and we rely on associations like the Great Lakes Bay Manufacturer Associations, MMTC, MEDC, SPDC, all the people on this call today. We always rely on them to help put us in contact with some manufacturing clients that could take advantage of the program. If you think you're interested, we can usually qualify somebody in about a 5-minute phone call if you're on the fence as to whether you may or may not qualify. Usually by asking just a few more questions, about 5 minutes, we can help people through that. So feel free to call me directly or at my email on the screen, or go to our website, or work through Tanya or Jeremy. We work closely with them. So we'd love to help anybody on the phone when we can today. And so with that, I'll stop and turn it back to Tanya and see if there's questions.
Thanks, Scott. We did have one question that came in for Dave with the SBDC, and I know he addressed it with that person directly, but I want to make sure everybody is aware of it in case you have that same question. And Steve asked, are you allowed to pursue the ERTC if you are already receiving a PPP loan? So Dave, can you address that just real quick for those that may have any interest in that?
Sure can, Tanya. And first of all, I'm going to apologize for the barking dog in the background. It's just going to happen. So, but yeah, in terms of the employee retention tax credit, you may be eligible for that even if you have a PPP loan. And you really need to talk to your CPA about this, is likely as long as it is outside of the 8-week period identified under the Paycheck Protection Program loan, and you are not going to be seeking forgiveness of that loan, you may be eligible to also take advantage of the employee retention tax credit, but those periods cannot overlap. There were a couple of other questions too that maybe I can kind of jump in to address. One thing I didn't talk about much was under the PPP loan, it is a forgivable loan. That's the intent of it. And the whole purpose of that is to keep people on a business's payroll. So what's happened though is that most businesses have done what any smart business person would do, which is to conserve cash right off the bat when this whole event happened. So you laid off people. Very difficult to bring people back. If you look at the $600 federal unemployment benefit under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, the PUA, in addition to the max unemployment someone's eligible for in the state of Michigan, $362, that equates to about $24 an hour when you look at it on a weekly basis. So if you're paying someone less than $24 an hour, it's going to be really hard to bring somebody off unemployment back into the company to take advantage of that. In order to be eligible for forgiveness of that loan, you have to have 75% of your costs associated have to be related to your payroll costs. And again, that's fully burdened payroll. And then the other expenses we talked about, like mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, make up another 25%. So again, and one of the big challenges we have is that we haven't gotten real specific guidance yet from the U.S. Department of Treasury and the Small Business Administration on exactly how they will process that loan forgiveness. There was another question from somebody in regard to available money for companies with 700 employees. There's a program through the Federal Reserve that's out there right now called the Main Street Lending Program. Guidance has not been distributed on this yet, but essentially, as we know of it today, the Main Street Lending Program is a $600 billion loan purchase program that has been established by the Federal Reserve, set up a facility to do this. And they're going to be purchasing loans, existing loans that are out there for businesses, as well as making new loans. They've set aside $60 billion for the purchase of existing loans and $70 billion for in equity for the purchase of or for letting of new loans. Those new loans are expected to have a 4-year maturity date and a 1-year deferral. We don't yet know what interest rates are going to be. We don't yet know what additional terms are going to be associated with that. So that's coming, and that really is intended for businesses above 500 employees and less than 10,000 employees. Anything else? Any other questions you want me to try and address?
We'll open it up. If anyone has a question, you can unmute and ask at this time.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I was wondering about the PPP program. Our employees are laid off, and if we, when we bring them back, well, if we get the PPP loan in the second phase, and then we bring our employees back, we'll need to start up slowly. So we might not have the full payroll going for the 8-week period following the start of the loan. Can we go back and use some of the payroll that we had prior to them being laid off?
So the answer as we know it today, and I always qualify this with as we know it today, because the rules are evolving on all of these programs with the federal government. The way the current regulation is set up is that the short answer to your question is no. The payroll period is defined as that 8-week period covered from the close of the loan forward, and so you can't go back and do a look back on that payroll. Essentially, what would happen is if you're going to phase people on slowly onto your payroll, the amount forgiven and eligible for forgiveness during that 8-week period will actually be less than your total loan amount. So that leaves you with an option, a couple of options. One option is to use that PPP dollars in a different capacity. There may be some risk associated with that. Your lender should be able to answer questions regarding that. The other option you have is to hold those PPP loan funds in a reserve and then repay those funds. And that repayment would happen without any penalty.
Could we simply use those funds and then they would become a loan at what, 1% interest or
Correct.
get paid back over 2 years? If
Yes.
if we couldn't use them for payroll because we didn't have enough business to support the payroll.
In theory, yes. And this is where there's still a little bit of gray area here. And so there are some very conservative lenders and very conservative CPAs that are looking at it and saying, you can only use that loan amount during this 8-week period for the specified qualified expenses of payroll, utilities, rent, mortgage interest. On the other end of the spectrum are lenders and CPAs who are less conservative, who are saying, look, it's just going to convert to a low interest loan. And so if you use the proceeds, there's to your best effort. And the reason I say your best effort is that in the rules and regs, the qualification for liability is good faith effort. If you've made a good faith effort, the federal government has said, you know, we as long as you haven't intentionally attempted to defraud the federal government for use of these funds, we will accept a good faith effort as a measure of trust in the process. So I think there is some latitude. There are just different schools of thought as to how much liability a business should take on, and that's guidance from generally banks and your lender and your CPA.
So it's up to the lender?
It's not up to the lender, but the lender does make, because the loan is actually through the lender, your loan is actually through a bank on a PPP loan.
Right.
It is fully guaranteed by the federal government, but the loan is actually with the lender. And the lender, so some of the lenders are concerned that through the federal bank examination process, that they may have some risk, even though the federal government, in the context of the CARES Act, has indemnified the banks of all risk associated with these loans. There is a certain segment of the banking population that looks at it and says, yeah, you've said this to us before, but then you've come back and, you know, there's been, you know, ramifications or implications that we weren't anticipating. So, you know, I think it is to some degree up to your lender as to how that forgiveness process works and how the terms are complied with under the loan.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? It is now 3 o'clock, the end of our time. Just to let you know, this has been recorded today, even with all my technology issues that I've had. But I will have it out on the GLBMA website under resources probably tomorrow. You will be receiving an email shortly with the slide decks and contact information. Feel free to let us know if you have any additional questions. We do hope that you take part in our short survey that's included in the email on how the webinar was and if there's any additional resources that you're looking for from the Great Lakes Bay Manufacturers Association. Stay safe and have a great day.
Thank you, Tanya, and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.